Here we go. Got to get both my machines recording just in case. The last week, the primary machine had a glitch about halfway through. It had all that darkness. I had to use the recording from the alternate machine to get things sort of mysterious.
So you just log in on two of them and
Yeah,
record?
and one of them, my primary laptop is the one that has been acting weird. There's something wrong in the settings somewhere I haven't been able to sort out. The other laptop works okay though.
Are you Windows or Mac?
Yeah, Windows.
Oh, hallelujah. I didn't think anybody else was left. It was Windows. Military.
I just can't use Apple. I've been prejudiced against them my whole life. I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, well. I'm still Windows. Although I did buy an iPhone recently. I haven't learned to use it yet, but that's totally different story.
Well, I had to buy a phone yesterday. I dropped it a couple nights ago and broke the camera, but it also broke the something in there. It wasn't charging and all that. So we had to go down to the AT&T store to buy a phone. And so when I said, yeah, I like an Android, and she says, not an iPhone? It was like, my wife said, I don't know what's wrong with them, but everybody else in the family's iPhone except me.
Interesting. I've observed that situation in a couple of families that I know. So one of the first things, so you put a link to the recordings. The recordings are on YouTube from last week.
Yeah, they are in a
the private,
in a private, yeah. So it has people have to know the link in order to get to it.
Yeah, got it. So I need to download it from YouTube, because when you said you were going to put it on, and I don't remember if
I was going to put it on Basecamp. I had so much trouble getting it processed. I haven't not had a chance to upload it yet.
Oh, okay.
But I will do that this weekend.
Okay.
Now that I got them, it wasn't until the other day that I even got the two. I had to break it into two pieces because the file was so big. Oh, wait a minute. I keep forgetting I got this darn, I had this security thing on. Yeah, here come the other ladies.
Yep. So they're there. Keeps them in the waiting room until you let them in.
Something in the setup. I forgot to turn the setup off, or the security setting off. Let's see, and unenable waiting room. So but other people, if they show up, should be able to come in. Yeah. So anyway, what I will do is I will now I sorted out those Wonderful. Other recordings. I will put those in a folder in this project. So if you guys want to download them, you can for local consumption.
Great.
And the software that I can recommend too, just in general, if you like downloading stuff from YouTube, is called Wondershare. They have a full range of like video processing programs in their little package, and it's much less expensive than Camtasia. Now I've been using Camtasia for 20 years for all my video production, and so I'm comfortable with it, and it's a couple $100. But Wondershare I think you can get for about $100, and it lets you very easily download videos from YouTube, and then you can process it inside Wondershare. So you can do editing, sound recording, video production, changing formats. Like I use Wondershare for, like, if I have an AVI file, which is the uncompressed, very, very large video, it'll crunch it into whatever format I need, like MP4,
right,
WAV file or whatever. So Wondershare it's a nice way to download videos.
I've got that in my OneNote
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
from your introduction to the tools and everything, which I went through.
Okay.
I,
Cool.
I actually had a question, and it was, you split that into infrastructure and tools, and there was something, I think maybe you had Zoom as a tool, and I wondered why it wasn't infrastructure, but that's sort of the geek.
Well, it's I actually use it for a field expedient video recording. Like
Yeah,
sometimes it's just easier to just work right in Zoom
yeah,
with an audience of zero, record it to a local computer, and then it gives me the MP4 sort of already in HD form, and and it's not bad, and you can do whiteboard inside of it, and it's just familiarity with it, I guess. It's so it's an alternative
yeah. I've
means
used it.
of video production in that sense.
Yeah, and I had Wondershare listed in your tools. So you and I last time were
Mhm.
walking through a list of notes you had taken
Oh
when
yeah,
when
yeah,
everyone else came in. And I
yeah,
don't, since this is a multi-person group right now, I don't
yeah.
want to take the
Sure.
group time for you and I to go through that unless it would be useful for them at some point.
It's probably useful. You know, I
Okay,
would
shall
think
we say
there's some goodies in there.
shall we say hello first and figure out what we're
Sure.
doing for today? Excellent.
Yeah, I'd like to ask what this, because I came in on the very end
Yeah,
last week. So if you could just tell us what this is all about, like start from the
yeah,
beginning,
for
might
sure.
help.
Yeah. So I already started the recording on these. My general practice is always to record videos unless anybody say, hey, I would rather not. And you don't even have to have a reason to not want it recorded. Like you're under no pressure to be recorded. And even if we are recording and you say in retrospect, hey, I wish I hadn't recorded, I'll just go ahead and delete it. No questions asked. And then if there's anything any of us ever thinks is sensitive about anything somebody else said, for their protection, we can always say, hey, I'd like to have that cut. So, but I generally like to um, have things recorded because it makes me sharper, and I never know I'm going to say anything that's any good. And I it happens so little that I hate to miss the chance. So I would just say all that to just say I would I like to record it, but if you would rather not, I can stop it at any time. Yeah, Denise.
Sorry, recovering academic. I it's probably something that if we're going to be a group,
Mhm.
at some point we should think about what we're going to do, because I can certainly see editing something out, but if I know something's being recorded and I'm expecting to have that recording to be available
Mhm.
for me to create artifacts with, then that's different. And it's not a matter of right, wrong, or what I think the rules should be. It's just that I want to know the rules up front, because when they
Right.
change in the middle, I
Yeah,
always get
my
screwed.
standard practice on this when I run groups is to have a one-page set of agreements that sort of always has the rules of the roads and what we do with the products and to record, not record, and all that. Once we kind of get into the formative, say we sort of agree on what we're going to do. So I'll be ready to, I think, probably produce that this weekend for our
Perfect.
use. And yeah, to get to Sue's point, so what I thought this could be is a HCU alumni working group specifically focused on book writing and the production of artifacts out of that process in support of your like HCU delivery. But really with the central idea of being the book. In my experience, having the book as the keystone in your production sets up everything else because it allows you to go shorter with snippets to say, hey, I've got a book. Here's a sample. Here's my cover. Here's what I do. It has a sense of gravitas around that. And then it also leads to longer production, like video lessons, workbooks that are in, or workshops that teach the book, or workbooks, which are the application of practical exercises from the book. So the book has been for me in the last year has been just that anchor around which everything else, or the axle around which everything revolves. So my thought was that this hour could be something that helps with that idea with people that are in various stages of writing books, whether they're ebooks or chapters or techniques of writing, editing, accountability, whatever you need, or how to produce anything like that is what I thought this could be. And if we kind of keep it to the HCU alumni, then there's always that association with, the larger mission and how the book can facilitate part of that.
And shared background.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it just what I was going to do with the second meeting, the second hour there would be a break, and then that would just sort of be open to just brainstorming whatever anybody wants to talk about that's related maybe to the things they've heard me say, or what or anybody wants to discuss in greater detail something with the HCU application. Like the Thursday meeting can kind of be broad and generic and coffee talk in the comments, and nobody wants to hog the mic. But I was thinking the second hour might be a place where if 2 or 3 people wanted to get together and have a dedicated space to talk about things specifically in greater detail, it could be that kind of a workshop. And then be in Zoom. If it was like, hey, this group wants to do this and that group wants to be that, if this group bigger, just do breakout rooms out of that place. It could also be something like the quiet space for accountability working. I've seen the folks at Rizuku do that, where 10 people just get together and they decide they're going to work on their thing for an hour in silence. And on the half hour, just come in and check in and say, I've made progress, and I get the social support and social pressure to perform. So that's what that second hour would be.
Okay, so then explain what Tuesday is at 6 o'clock.
I don't know what
Tuesday. Yeah, you've sent out 2 things about the writing group is Tuesday at 6 o'clock.
No, I should have said Friday. I'm sorry. It should have been Friday.
Yeah, you got them Tuesday, April 2nd, every week till the end. There's a
Oh, I must have just mistyped that. I'm sorry.
Okay, because but that's probably because I was telling Denise that there was a Tuesday group and she didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
About it.
No, but that's just my miss. I didn't even see that.
Was that in an email or?
I must have just screwed that up.
Yeah, it's an email and it's a broadcast or message there in boot camp.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. That should have been Friday. I'm going to change that right now. The alumni workshop was 6 to 7, and the book writers should be. Oh yeah, you're right. It says Tuesday. I'm going to make all of those changes right now.
Good move.
Sorry about that. Good catch.
Okay, well, no problem. I'll just
So we're going to make
because
that.
I was like, okay, now we're meeting on Tuesdays.
No, once a week is more than enough.
Yeah.
So Friday, April 12th, 5 to 6 until the end of December. Update.
Okay.
And all future ones. Yeah, that should be fixed now. Yeah, that actually looks correct. Just must not have had my glasses on. So anyway, that's so everything for me, the HCU support for me is Friday night office hours for them. So I try to do something different each night of the week. I have Monday night is a small group coaching. That's sort of each person has their own project tied together by my general teaching on trading, but each guy's working on his own project. Tuesday nights is a creativity course where they have weird and wacky storytelling lessons that generate creativity, and they just come in and testify what the weirdest thing was that happened to them that week that was triggered by that story, and that produces transformative results. Wednesday night is my book club discussion, which just finished last week. So I took the book that I wrote, chunked it into 10 sets, and did a Q&A on each one of those. So now my Wednesday slot is open for the next book and more teaching. So I'm doing some follow-up sessions for all the book writers, because there was about 200 people that signed up to listen to those. And I've got some smaller pieces that are going to lead to book 2. And I'm gonna actually do the sessions first and write the book in stages and then talk about them on Wednesdays. And when I'm done with 10 weeks, I'll have the next book written. So I'm going to reverse the order and go that way, because I'm trying to gear it towards what they want to talk about, what they want to hear about. So I give them a list of topics, and then they ask specific questions that I know what to put in into the book.
And that's your trade. That's your second trading book?
Yeah.
Okay. And about the creativity, is the creativity one you mentioned, is that related to the creativity course that's in Resume that you shared? Okay.
Yeah, it is. So there's actually 2 courses that I teach. One of them is a expedited course that I teach for the Army, which has some, what is creativity, says who, how do you do it, what are some quick and easy exercises. I give that one away.
That's the 101.
Yeah. And then 202 is the one that we did for the Army. And Angus Fletcher wrote a book based on story science, which is his work at Ohio State. He wrote a 30-chapter book for us that was geared towards Army learning and Army leaders. So they're half a page story that's connected to some kind of historical event. And then he asks some reflection questions on it. Then I add a lesson on trading that is related to the same kind of concept. So they read 2 different stories each week. Then they reflect on it. Then they come in and they talk about the thing that was the biggest aha moment. So the act of reading these stories and then thinking about them and then reflecting and then having the pressure to talk about the most interesting thing that week is a forcing function. And it almost doesn't matter what their big aha moment was. Just the fact that, and then that actually acts like popcorn popping. And then that ends up being a 90-minute session that takes us who knows where. Well, that has turned out to be, for my clients that have been through that, the most transformational thing that we've done. And I've had some senior guys take that course that really were amazed at what that does. So I'll be talking about that we got a symposium for Army University in June. And that's one of my presentations is going to be on how that story science generates creativity in leaders and how to do it. And that's what got the general's attention and caused him to direct that will be taught in all Army schools next year, which is pretty cool. That was my victory for this week. I got the alert that all the presentations were approved and that he had made that directive. Now I gotta go mend some bridges up in our headquarters. They're upset that the 3-star told us what to do. And so I gotta go make friends again. So that's my heroic journey for this week.
So do you want to catch Sue and Joy up to where you were what we were doing before they.
Yeah, so what we had last week was, before you guys came in, Denise and I have been working on the idea of artifacts. I sort of reviewed how I think of artifacts as the leverage to produce materials. And we looked at the root atomic level of artifacts, which was flashcards and a quick pitch, you know. Hey, dogs are not fed yet. Family just got home. So so Denise was working on, she briefed 3 flashcards that she'd put together and some of the text, and that led us into some ideas about how those could be built into presentations that would build her book, which is what I think of as her legacy knowledge gift to the world, which she hasn't approved that yet, but I think we may end up going that direction. So that's what we did last week, and I had a set of notes where I was responding to her narrative, almost like if I was her client, and she was coaching me, the things that occurred to me that I would try to engage her with. So we got through about a third of those notes, and I have those notes available if you wanted to talk about them. But that's sort of a catch up of where we were. The way I see this hour could go, each time is we make sure that everybody gets an opening statement, where they are, what they want to talk about that week. We knock that out in the first 10 minutes, and then we just figure out how to fill in the other 50 minutes with goodness. That's, just enough structure to report on progress. And hey, what's the sticky point that I need help with? Or what was the victory that I got that I want to share to inspire others, or to maybe suggest ways it could work for them? That actually resembles a lot about that creativity course, by the way, is that when people come in with their aha moments and what they did about it, it ends up triggering things in others. So if you guys are okay with that as an approach, I could put that in the agreements page, which sort of says how we structure the sessions. But again, with the understanding that that's always written in pencil and we can always adapt to whatever we want to do.
Well, ultimately, these are your groups, so you get.
Well,
but you've got to get benefit out of it as well. You can't just be here for our sake,
that's the benefit I get. I mean, the work I've been doing, in true storytelling, I'm working with my doctoral mentor, David Boji, on that. And in true storytelling, the first 2 principles are to always be truthful and share those truths. And the second one is make room for all the voices that are in the room before you can proceed into the next things, which are working on plot and timing and staging and supporting, and ultimately to reflection. Those are the 7 principles. But the first 2 are about creating the safe and trusted space in which truth can be told. So that's nice. When you're trying to create a true storytelling group and you're the facilitator of that group, you find yourself in the impossible position of allowing everybody to have their truth in their own way without judgment or criticism or processing, and yet also have expectations met for, agenda and time and orderly discussions or whatever. So you try to lead without leading. For me, the experience of being with you guys and trying to be a servant of the people is part of me learning how to be a better facilitator and to share the microphone more. So that's what I'm getting. That's what I get out of this. Plus, I will sanitize whatever insights we get and talk about that, in the, I've been writing on the subject of how to be a good true storytelling facilitator. So I've got a chapter in a recent handbook on that. I'm probably going to write a full book on that So I'm building towards that. So don't worry about me being some kind of humble servant.
Mhm.
I mean, what I'm getting out of this is inspiring and boosts my creativity. It's given me ideas about how to collaborate with others and learn from the creativity of others. It's important for an Army guy to get out of the huddle, to get out of the motor pool and talk with you civilians,
Mhm.
see how the rest of the world works. I say that with genuine happiness. So don't worry about me, Sue. I'm
Okay.
I'm here. I am actually here to facilitate and to help. It makes me a better citizen on Thursdays because then I don't feel like I have to keep butting in all the time.
And just, if I may,
Hmm.
the part 1 of 2, the first 35, 36 minutes is me
Yep.
walking Ken through my flashcards, which is a set of artifacts that I perhaps would work through with a group of potential students, prospects, as it were.
Yep.
And he gave me an assignment, and flashcards were they're the atoms, the smallest type of artifact. So I scurried around trying to figure out how to create some and put together 3 that I thought would get me through an hour with him.
Yeah, I
It
started
did.
watching that one.
And so I would love if you have a chance to take a look at that, or any interest in taking a look at that. And Marianne summarized very nicely that I help people find their ideal target clients when everything else has failed.
Yeah.
And I've written about that for quite a while, and now I'm teaching people in the real world to do a do-it-yourself version. So, and then, as I said, Ken had gotten partway through his comments on it, and I'll be interested whenever to get a a digital version of the text, so I don't have to retype it all myself. And to hear the comments that go along with it, because the text is, as text is, fairly cryptic. So,
And then what'd you do in part 2?
well,
Yeah, part 2 is us when you gals came in.
Yeah.
And
So-
we started
Okay.
kicking it around.
so the first 35, 36 minutes of part 1 of 2 was me
Oh,
pretty much
gotcha.
talking through the flashcards. 36 to the end of it is Ken giving me walking through his notes on it, and with some discussion. And then when you all came in, there's part of that in part 1, and then that gets finished in part 2, just because he had to break up the recordings because of the
Right.
size.
Okay, good. So those weren't separate days. That's what I was wondering.
No.
It was the same. It was 2 parts. Yep. Yeah. And so the idea of flashcards, like that thing I have behind me, is a live sketch from a shamanic drumming group that I'm in, where I had an intention, was trying to describe what I was working on, which was the intersection between Western ways of knowledge, WWOK, and indigenous ways of knowledge, IWOK. And so there's a real depth of literature in both of those: practitioners, scholars, habits, institutions, all of that. And I noticed that for each one of them, there were layers, like an onion. There was sort of the sacred knowledge, holy of holies, that is hidden from the outsiders. Then there's like a core sacred in the second read. It's like public tenets that are considered foundational. And then there's sort of the third round is habits and practices and procedures, the way we normally get things done. And then in the shaded area outside where the overlap is, the outreach is sort of that fuzzy space in which you get, it's a meeting engagement of the minds. You know, a Western science scholar meets an indigenous scholar and they talk about their methods. And so where I'm actually trying to locate is, and in the very center of that, in the question mark, is I'm trying to adopt a question mark mindset, which sets aside the path that I've taken from Western ways of knowledge into that space as an engineer and a post-positivist and all that. And I just want to sit in the space and see the interplay between these two bodies of knowledge. And I'm choosing the area of storytelling and research methods, one of them being a very almost a personal communication like we're doing here. And then the second one is as a research methodologist, I'm concerned about how researchers find good questions, get information, make sense of it, publish it, do things with it, and claim a validity of knowledge that comes from their application of a method that is consistent with the paradigm they're coming from. So that intersection in research methods is another area of interest of mine. So what I'm trying to do is to be a humble observer in that question mark, to set aside. And so true storytelling turns out to be a way to try to do that, to be in a circle and set aside judgments and dialogue and discussion, but to be a deep listener. So, for instance, one of the things that we've learned, this would be my last comment, one of the things we've learned in true storytelling is that, yeah, it's hard to come in and to start telling the truth right off the bat as much as you can with people that you haven't fully vetted yet, you know, if I can say it that way. But to just start telling your truth as best you can so that the people may thrive. Except what's harder is to be a good listener who has adopted that same mindset and is not just waiting for your turn to talk, but who is actively trying to not make sense of it yet, not to jump to a conclusion, not formulating my answer for when you stop talking, but to have emptied your bowl, so to speak, and to fully experience the entire story until the other person says, aho, which is Lakota Sioux for amen, or as it should be, and so be it. And then the talking stick is passed. It turns out that in a true story circle, if there's 10 people in there, the one story that's being told is powerful for sure. But the 9 deep listeners turns out to be where the work is really being done. It's, can we suspend disbelief for a while and just be open to the spirit in that moment of mindfulness, and then with a promise to yourself that when I leave, I'll go ahead and process it later when I'm out of that circle. So that's what I'm learning about experientially in that question mark, because I always have this tension of, I notice when the Western part of me wants to say, oh, aha, I know where this is going, and I want to, and I got to set the pencil down. So the shamanic drumming session was a chance to have a true story circle, and then we do 20 minutes of drumming with the cameras off, and you just let the reflection be what it is, and that sketch came out of that, and it has captured perfectly for me what I was trying to do. And that artifact, that's where this is going. That artifact is going to be what I brief to the 3-star general next Thursday, because he wants to talk about what is reflection professionally. How do we do it? How do we teach it? What's the point? Some of that stuff. So I'm going to try to frame my experience with active reflection as a way to talk about being open to other stakeholders, other members of the other tribes that I'm trying to I'm trying to bring peace to the valley. I have to use different methods that I might use in a military experience. So that right there is a 5x8 card with a pencil sketch and clumsy and ugly, but it has a certain authenticity and power to it. And I can do an 8-hour workshop with that one picture, or I can do a 3-minute elevator speech, or like I've just done an 8-minute mini TED talk. So when Denise and I are talking about artifacts, it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be correct, or it has to be the thing that you need. And so at which point I will say, aho, and offer the talking stick.
I'll pick up the talking stick just for a moment. This is my first time coming here, and so I don't know what to expect. I did put it in the base camp. I just joined the base camp that I have to accept a delivery, and I just heard it happening outside. So I'm just wondering if this group is going to be for me. It sounds like it is a group that is intended to stay together, not come and go, but Friday nights are not always going to be good for me. I'm fascinated so far. I'm not didn't hear anything I don't like. But I think I just want to know more. Want to know more about what we're planning to do, and if that really fits in with what I need to do, and if I'm available on Friday nights. That's a key part of it. So why don't I accept my delivery and we can go on to someone else. And when I turn my camera back on, I'll try to hear. I may not hear everything you guys say, but I will try to hear while I'm gone, and I will be fully engaged when I get back. Does that work?
Aho.
Okay. Aho, passing the talking stick to someone else.
So I guess I can just say that I'm working on, I have a book out. It's not laid out for me to teach a course from it, but I already have a course and I'm certified in a certain, program. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. That will do me no good. Plus I might end up stepping on, toes of intellectual property. It's all very general. I can do general, but I just can't do anything specific that might look like it's right with the course. So I can't re-engineer a book. However, I am working on a 3-book series, and that one of them, it kind of has to do with leadership, but not to the extent that you're doing. This just has to do with more do's and don'ts in the youth sports world with coaches. So it started with coaches, and then I came up kind of with the parent do's and don'ts, and then the athlete, So some philosophies in there, some ethics, rights and wrongs, good and bad behaviors, that type of thing. So that may be where I go, but I've been putting that off only because it didn't relate directly to my course, and I know it would be more beneficial for me to publish a book that's directly related more to what I'm doing. So I also have like 30 tips for parents that I might of stuff that they can actually help their own athletes with, their confidence and positive motivation, and keeping the kids going. Now these are more high level competitors than what you're working with, kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I might go that way just because there's a little bit of a void out there and those types of things for parenting things. I mean, there's a lot of books on parenting and some good ones on sports because I'm in, a colleague has done some good things in that, but totally different from what I would be doing. he's got a big movement, which is great, but I would just use my stuff to lead to my course and not start making that a movement or like just teaching from my book. Mine would be a lead generation, I guess. So it's it would be more like an ebook. It would have to be beefy enough, to get published.
Yeah.
And I can do that also for the coach and the parent and the athlete. So that was kind of mine. It'll be, more short books, and it might be good since I've written the big book, kind of like sounds like Denise, you've done. I've got the 120,000 word book, so which I can break that up into like 10 parts as well. And I could steer that into my course. So I have some things, I'm just going to need to narrow things down. But I might, since I've got to promote my course, it'd be better to start with a shorter ebook that I could use as a lead generation directly into my course, which might mean a tips book. If that's stuff that, if that's like what I'm supposed to be discussing here to,
Yeah, I think so. That makes good sense. Let me ask you about your 30 tips. Is there a logical grouping of those, like
yes.
5
Yeah,
topics,
I've got,
6 topics
yeah,
with 5 tips in each one?
yeah, it's basically 3. It's before
Okay.
competition, after competition, then this general everyday stuff the parents would do because the kids aren't always competing, as you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's that thing. So I've got those 3 groupings of 10
Yeah.
each, which
So
is
how to prepare for a competition to focus that last, 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. Something like and then the post competition, how to deprocess it and heal and get ready and reset. And then sort of like a maintenance phase or ongoing maintenance.
yeah, kind of the ongoing. So the ongoing would
Yeah.
include just, proper rest and relaxation and sleep and nutrition and all those things that the parents need. It's more like preparation, the home part that the parent needs to take care of the athlete preparation.
Yeah. So tell me a little more about your friend and his program and his outreach, and as a way of thinking about, I'm thinking about how to leverage that body of knowledge and that community of practice.
Yeah, he's got a big movement now. He published his book about the same time I did, but he was already had a big following and some stuff, but his is under Changing the Game, I think is his big book called. And so it's just grown and grown. And so he has aligned himself with a lot of other, big greats in sports and coaching and things like that. So in parenting and things like that. So it's he's got a whole movement in that. John is his name. So I'm I said it, and his is like that's all youth sports. I'm very specific into gymnastics, and gymnastic psychology is my book. So it's, we're different. He's not a sports psychologist.
And you said his name was John?
Yeah, John, and it's Changing the Game, youth sports. And so it started off with coaches, and now he's doing stuff, with parents to just make it so that, it's closer related to what you're doing with your soccer kids. Let's just say that. Than my highly competitive athletes in sports psychology that really need to focus on their mental game. So he's a lot more holistic, the whole big picture. I'm more narrowed on, I'm focusing on life skills too, but mine is really focused on the highly competitive athlete that doesn't get that kind of support from the coaches. The coaches aren't trained well enough in those areas, and the kids need, some actual mental game training, which is what I do.
Yeah, got it.
And my program's a year-long program. And so Joy and I were talking about that first. We both need a 3-month minimum because it just takes that long to make any mindset changes, habit changes, and to actually learn something, even as kids, even though they suck stuff in, but they've got to have the repetitiveness to make it actually turn into a habit. And then mine's year long. And, you know, I'm folks, so that's where I want to put them is year long. But I'm going to do a 4-week, which will be a 6-week pilot this summer with one of the groups that I've consulted with before. And so it's 4 weeks, but I'm going to do the extra week before prep and the extra week at the end to get my testimonials and get everything down and give them their next steps, and then hope they sign up then for the 12-month program, which, you know, I'll let the kids do, you know, the 3 months and 3. And I'm probably going to have a journal go with it. I do not have a journal yet, so I'm going to do 3-month journals. So that also is another book that I think if I do it correctly, somebody else might be able to actually pick it up and use it. Maybe it's not in my program. If I'm talking about specific mental skills, they won't know what I'm talking about. If I'm generic, they might. And as you know, journals kind of sell well. So.
Yep. Now, okay. Now did you say you have another book already, right?
Yeah.
And that's a large book. Tell me
Yeah.
more about that.
It's just called Gymnastic Psychology. It's just a very comprehensive book. And so it just doesn't lend itself. I have not done worksheets with it because it's just too much in there.
Yep.
And so it's just way too much. But I can use it as they're actually going to get it for free if they buy my course. But it's a $50 book on Amazon. It's not cheap, but I have sold about 3,000 copies.
Yeah. Okay. And this has, yes, and you've got a book on tips.
Not yet, but I have 30
But
tips.
I mean, that's in the building phase. Yeah.
And then I've got the one, the you know, leadership philosophy book. Those 3 books too, also. That's separate from tips. Now when I'm going into my tips, I'm finding out if I pull out a lot of the philosophy that I was going into at first with the coaches and the ethics involved in coaching, then I end up with a lot more tips. So I've been working with coaches mainly forever, and I've written about 100 articles that all for coaches. I don't want to work with coaches anymore. I want to work with the kids. I used to be a coach for kids. I'm a physical coach, gymnastics coach, just like you're coaching soccer.
Yeah.
And so I'm retired from that now. And so I'd rather now just work with the kids on their mental game and deal with the parents, which I do bring in the coaches in my program, but I really don't want to do any coach training, which is only why that philosophy ethics book kind of got shelved. It's about 3/4 done, but I just really don't want to work. There's a lot of coaches that really just aren't open to a lot of things, you know, especially in sports psychology. They're either like, I mean, there's just still a lot of ignorant people out there that think, oh, my kid's not mental, they don't need this, or and also, why should they take any philosophy and ethics stuff from me? That that might be somebody else, like somebody like you. There's a lot more about that. So anyway, I just shelved those. But the tips, there's a lot of stuff in those philosophy books that I wrote that I could, even though I already have my 30 tips, that I could bring in maybe some better stuff from those. And then those I wanted to turn into posters also, because some of that came from articles that were written years ago, and they got picked up in big magazines, international magazines. And so it's very, very popular, and I've got testimonials on them, which ties into the philosophy stuff. So it's like I'd be repurposing. And yes, when you mentioned all the flashcards, I just thought each one of my 30 things is a flashcard. Right there is.
Yep. So you have a growing deck, some of which can be standalone posters. And if you think about the flashcards, each one really is a poster by itself. So you have some posters already, but I would say as you start thinking about all your flashcards, you're going to realize that all of them rise to the level of being a poster in and of itself. So then
Wow.
you have a deck of posters. You know, the guys I've been working with, Pip Decks is the name of their particular brand. I forget what Pip stands for, but it's the idea of build your deck and they will come.
Okay.
And so here's some ideas that so this is I think of this technique and Denise will probably be all over me on this one, but like an ecology or an ecosystem approach is I'm just trying to map out all the moving pieces and look for connections to see who's who in the zoo. It occurs to me that one thing would be if you could get some kind of little diagnosis tool,
I do. I have,
a survey to give
yeah,
to
I've got
John.
one. I've
Hey,
got
John,
two.
hey, John, why don't you ask your people to quickly and easily list the problems or opportunities that they're trying to solve or seize? What
My
are the things
mentor
that,
did
yeah,
that. So I've got that. They surveyed like
Yeah.
5,000 parents.
yeah. So then you end up getting some kind of Pareto thing, like most of the people are interested in that one, and then in this one, and then this one, and this one. So you get some kind of
Right.
that problem diagnosis is going to be your typical response, and it's going to probably fall into one of your categories of before a competition, after a competition, and then in between them, what you're doing for ongoing maintenance and support. I would also just say that when you look at your impact diagram, I would argue that each one of those tips probably has one of these three as the primary audience,
Correct.
but with like this might be a primary category one, what parents should do in the before. I mean, what can you do as a parent to be a better supporter of your kid as they're gearing up for their competition? What do you do and what don't you do, and how do you set conditions? And that's going to be different than a coach who might be interested in it,
Right.
in what the parents are doing. And in fact, I would argue that I wouldn't necessarily rule out talking to coaches
No, I'm
because,
not. Everything
yeah,
I'm doing has 3 parts. I just don't want
yeah,
to
yeah,
focus on coaches.
yeah. Because what I think is there are things that you want to say that you can say to coaches about how to prepare parents and athletes for competitions. There's things that coaches do. And then there's things that where you want to talk directly to the parents about what they should do. And
Right.
then when you want to talk directly to the athletes about what they should do. But you also want to address, hey, parents and children, here's a set of mutual dialogue questions that allows you to talk to each other productively. So you're not talking past each other, so that you're
Right.
actually members of a healthy dialogue. And oh, by the way, you want a coach who respects that special relationship between that you've established with your child. Like you don't want them over,
Which is what's
yeah.
happening in the coaching program. I do
And that's
have a
why,
big
yeah,
triangle there.
yeah. So now as I think about, I actually also have to, I need a tip from you on parents. This is what you're looking for in a coach and how you talk to the coach to make sure that you and your child are heard and to see if it's a good fit. And coaches, you need to be aware of the different kinds of parents and how to sharpen your message so that it's clear that you're working with parents that you want to work with and that it's going to be productive. So it's
And I
not just
have all
the,
that.
yeah,
I have
good.
wrton on everything you're
Yeah.
bringing up.
Yeah. So to me, that little holy triangle right there is the,
Yeah.
coaches, parents, athletes, and then that goodness in the middle. So, and so all of these tips that you're generating, there's probably some map that allows me to think of the three categories and also the individual messages I make to them, and then maybe something like the integration piece. That how do we talk together in our little triangle group of all three. So
Yeah, I
Uh,
didn't think about bringing in all the communication stuff that I've written about.
yeah, I think I try to address that in a primitive way. And when I coach, by giving my parents an actual one-page sheet of the words I want them to use when they're talking about the game of soccer with their kids. It's the same words that I use with my players, and I want them to hear what words I am specifically using and why I use them, so that they can see if I'm the kind of coach they want for their kids, and so that they can reinforce those messages. Like, don't be on the sideline cheering for kick it to the other end and run fast, when what I'm trying to get them to do is slow down, play with control, use your teammates together and make it a 3 against 1. And that's different than the panic adrenaline, which was really the bigger, faster team's going to win because they do.
Right.
Yeah, but if you're not bigger and faster, how do you win? Well, you got to play in a different way, and you got to use the language that will give you the strength to overcome all of the chaos and the noise and the adrenaline of the field. So that takes reinforcement. I need the players using those words. I need to speak to them with those words. At halftime, when we're judging how well things are going, I use exactly those words. And then afterward, the game, we talk about those words. And then parents, I need you to so I say all that just to say that the communication piece of this
Yeah.
uh, is what creates that community of practice out of those three different populations, which can, and if you don't have affirmative, intentional communication, you're going to get whatever comes out of our little monkey mind, driven by fear and emotion and all that other stuff. And that doesn't always turn out to be helpful. So that's one thing I would say. That little impact map that would give you sort of a one-page diagnostic tool to say, hey, folks, these are my 30 tips, and they're in these categories, and they're for those people. And here's the cheat sheet that lets you see. Now, assess yourself, and where do you and your child feel like you want to work? Like, I trust your judgment about knowing where you are. Where's it really going well? Where do I need some help? And then you can say to the coaches, hey, you could use this to help you have good structured conversations with your parents, and now you've got the materials that I can provide you. So those tips are not just 30 one-off things that are good, but they also are part of some kind of larger ecosystem approach. I would then say, when you get that large problem diagnosis product of research from the 5,000 respondees.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, you can then, once you have this kind of impact diagram, that thing will just continue to grow. You say, oh, here's a problem that the parents have set, or the athletes or the coaches. Do I have a tip for that yet? No, but I know what I would want to say about it. And now you have a way to add that to the network of recommendations. And because of the network math, the value of your tip network grows exponentially. Each time you add a new tip, it actually reinforces all the other ones. So the value of your growing network of tips is where this is really becoming actionable and valuable. Now, you will notice that you end up writing this from the bottoms up. You start with a specific problem you want to help them solve that they've identified, or an opportunity that they think is there that they don't know how to exploit. And then that thing, you end up writing about that from your knowledge, and it'll be consistent with the things that are in your larger ecosystem. And now that is actually adding a tremendous amount of power with each new tip. It grows rather than being just one more thing I got to remember that's isolated. You're giving them a structured approach to how to think about that. Now, taken in light of that, if you then start thinking about, you have your initial 3-month boot camp, almost, if I can say it that way, and your 12-month deliberate program, there's a logical connection between what's in the 3-month program and the 12-month program. And you probably have that structured so that there's a
Yeah.
lot of good little wins that are available, even if they don't
Yeah.
take the 12-month. I got some wins, but I also have some things that say this will get you started, but to get the full benefit, you're just
Right.
going to get more of this later on. So now you can show you're not just doing that as a teaser. I'm going to give you a bunch of things that are incomplete in 3 months. So now you have to take the 12, but no, that's bad form. So you give
Right.
them some things that say, here's some quick and easy ones that are always going to be good no matter what. And then here's some other ones that take more time because there's levels of this thing. There's, level 1 and 2 and 3. As you progress deeper and deeper,
Right.
you're going to get better and better. And so now what you have is you have a catalog, you have a roadmap towards increasing proficiency as they start going up the ladder of success. So
Right.
now
And
this,
it does that because
Yeah.
it actually goes back, like month
Yeah.
4 goes back to 1.
yeah,
And
and it
5
starts,
goes to 2.
yeah, and you
so
start
that
reinforcing
It
the
starts,
themes.
yeah, because
Sure.
you gotta have that in there, or it's like I said, it's just a one-off. You can't just assume that they've gotten the concepts or they're using them and it's working and all those kind of things.
Yeah. So now this one over here, the philosophy book, now is a special subset of this in which you're talking about the philosophical connections for coaches, players, and athletes just at the mindset level. I'm not going to say which is the best grip to use on the uneven bars. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how to think about integrating homework, fun time, and athletic training. There's a philosophy in there that talks about how I mix that. There's a philosophy about, do I encourage other sports or do I ask them to specialize, or what's the way that I mix those two ideas? There's a point in gymnastics earlier than almost any other sport, where if you do have aspirations, you must be specializing. But that may not be, for people that aren't necessarily looking to compete nationally. Maybe there's a slightly different spin, but you have an opinion about that. And so when if they are listening to you as a coach and a coach of coaches and a coach of parents, what are those top level things that guide the way that you implement this across your entire program? That quick and dirty book is a smaller one. I think that how to think about gymnastics for the long term, a life in gymnastics. What's that like? And, the happy trails and all that kind of stuff. So I think the philosophy element is where you're going to find if there's alignment between coaches, parents, and athletes, as you know, that we got to get our mind right about that to be with the same goals and same intentions and the same respect for each other's position and the communication strategy. And then we let coaches coach, we let parents be parents, we let athletes be the athletes. But the area where they all come together is where that philosophy is,
Yeah.
which is it's related to but different from your conceptual tips, which are standalone good things to do, good recipes. The philosophy is more of that general approach, and it is in support of the tips, and the tips support it, but it really is the top level. It's that fundamental talk that we have to make sure that we are in alignment with our entire program. So I think what I would recommend as a technique for you is not a monkey drawing like I have here, but just the way I've sort of mapped that out, that it looks at products, it looks at impact statements, it looks at your target audience, it looks at the potential of leveraging John and his very large database. Like you could just say, hey, I could brief your program probably right now in 20 minutes to a guy that says, look, John, there's a lot of things that I can do that doesn't detract from your work, but which allows me to address particular problems that I specialize in, and that I can be of support to you. And we have a natural partnership in there that's good for both of us. You can concentrate on your things, I concentrate on mine, and there's a synergy that's available. And then my final comment here would be that just tracing the path of a parent who's over in here with their particular child that has this problem diagnosis. How do they discuss? Is it through a tip that helps them, which leads them to your philosophy, which also leads them to your ecosystem, and then your short course and longer course? Then these other products derive from there. That journal is going to be good for people even if they don't take your course. The principles you lay out in there is going to be helpful. They may discover, hey, I don't want your whole program, but this journal is really good. And then 3 months later, they discover, you know what, this journal is so good, I think I'm going to go back and take her course. So don't be surprised that you get some backwash that
Yeah.
way. And then I would say a workbook are simply all of the little practical exercises that you put together that are probably the action steps for your tips.
Right, yeah.
I
I've
bet
got
you
all
each
that,
one of your
so.
tips leads to an exercise, and that you have a worksheet, one
Yeah, there's
pager or something.
worksheets, assessments, all of those types of things.
So you actually have two products. There's the journal for reflection, and then there's the workbook of exercises. And if you get the workbook of exercises, you pick one, you can journal about it. And you can start working on the individual pieces of your overall assessment plan. This
Yeah,
overall assessment plan lets them measure where they are and lets them go to the area that's the biggest concern. And that also becomes the way you can have a very effective session with a coach who says, hey, I'm a coach, I teach these things, you assess yourself, and then I will either agree or not agree with you, but I'm going to teach you how to self-assess so that we can quickly find the thing together that we agree we should be working on. I actually do that with my traders. I give them I get 75 skills that I think they should have, and I ask them to score themselves on, 1 to 7. On a 1, they've never even heard of it. On a 7, they could teach that by using their own practice as the example to somebody else. And then all of the spaces in between as you move up the craft level. So that description of the skills, the practical exercises become lessons in my long course. The assessment sheet gives them a roadmap of where they are. It drives the coaching session so that I never have to wonder what they want to work on, what they want to talk about. And I can do a coaching session with them in as little as 15 minutes. And I can sell them a coaching program for $1,000 for 10 sessions of 15 minutes. And then you schedule it when you're ready to work on a piece of homework. I say, don't waste your time scheduling my time with nothing to talk about. Oh, you picked one of those exercises, you worked on it, you have some insights, and now you've crystallized that in your journal, and now you have something to report on with a request for some assistance. Now we can have a 15-minute conversation that starts immediately from the place of interest, the teachable moment at the end of a piece of work that they did, and they can do that on their own because you're teaching them how to self-coach in that sense. So I would suggest that, getting a formal ecosystem picture of your work now lets you self-coach. See, how am I doing in each of these other little regions? Where's the thing that I feel like working on? Go to the one you feel like working on and work on that, make progress, lock it in, celebrate a little bit, and then feel your way through that. And then you have an accountability partner. Maybe it's us. Maybe it's the 5 to 6 meeting, or it's occasionally on the 6 to 7 meeting. You just come in and say, hey, here's where I am on my journey. And now you have a little picture of Sue with your icon. Here I am on my journey through this ecosystem. And I would say that to Joy, that I would invite you to think about the Friday night set, that 2-hour block is sort of, if you had things that were like really specifically located around writing and production and flashcards and technique, that first session is probably a good time to do that. The second one might be sort of like what this was, which was more of a brainstorming and how do I explore this area? I feel like I could do something over there, but I need some, I need some critical and creative thinkers to help me start filling in some of these blanks.
Oh, I
know what I
realized
mean?
I missed so much by just coming back and seeing a whiteboard full of wondering if you took Sue through a process or if Sue just started talking about, because she has a lot of process already and
Yeah.
artifacts, it sounds like,
Yeah.
ready. And then you just diagrammed it out for her. But
Yeah.
no, I don't have a diagram like that.
Well,
And-
look at you. You got something to work on now. This comes from, so I also do some work with systems thinking from the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, which is a nonprofit that looks to promote systems thinking in K through 12. I shamelessly use their material to teach graduate and doctoral students and military officers how to be systems thinkers. I just don't tell them that I'm using a third grade practical exercise. And when I do tell them that, they just think that's funny. And it's even better because they realize that it really is, we're talking at the tip of the iceberg level stuff where it's really foundational kind of. So, so what the technique that I just used there is in systems thinking, they'd call that a systems dynamics map. And it just
I
starts with the
wondered if
big,
it was a mind map. I've
Yeah,
done
it
some
really
mind
is.
mapping. They call
Yeah.
it mind mapping.
yeah. And what it really is a special form of mind map in which I'm thinking about actors, organizations, forces, objects, artifacts. And I'm populating an ecosystem, with rivers and hills. So I get some topography and I have some artifacts that are built and I have some issues on the table. And I also have players and actors and then once I sort of diagram those players and I can start drawing, the relationship between players now becomes implied and it suggests I can start filling that in. And so as I start listening to Sue describing about a minute into that, I started already just sort of, I knew there were some products. You'll notice I put the products near the outside of that. That stuff trickles down to become posters and flashcards and pip decks. And in the upper right-hand corner is that theoretical array of themes versus audiences that gives me that integration matrix. That's the top level complexity. And so that's why that for me, that all kind of goes in the upper right hand. And I put Sue in the middle and I put this pre-existing asset there, John, with all his large work and as a starting point for an easy set of wins and alliances that already feels like it's there, and how that can lead forward into her build out of that project. So
Is John a coach, like an actual coach that would work
I
with the
think so.
kids?
I think he has his own large nationwide program, probably with a large constituency with a body of knowledge.
Yeah, he's not a direct relation. We're just colleagues that wrote books at the same time with the same publisher. So we work together. He's more all general youth sports and younger kids, and I'm specifically gymnastics and competitors. He's a little older, but again, he's got a large network of, especially, parents and coaches in that, some affiliate types of things and that type of thing could be done. So I wanted to ask you about my ecosystem grid.
Yeah.
Is when we were first talking about that, you had I liked the way it was almost like a bingo card
Exactly.
that I could put in there that because there are, let's just say, like 10 or 12 main things. Somebody's got a mindset issue, they've got a confidence issue, they've got a fear issue, they've got, let's just look at some of the mental types of things like that. I can have a pile of tips under each of those. That could also be the pile, one for the parent, one for the coach, one for the athlete.
Yeah.
When you were saying to kind of organize them differently than just here I've got, because like you said, on one end,
Yeah.
it's got the pre-meet, the post-meet, the general stuff. We got the parent, athlete, coach, but then there's also all those topics that are specific that could, like you said, turn into its own thing. You know,
Exactly.
it's not a deck, it's not anything. It's like, I don't know, play bingo. And they pick
Yeah,
out,
so if
you know,
I actually do something like this for my Army officers. So there was a time in which we were going to graduate early because they were going to war, and I had 72 hours over 3 days. So basically 3 days to teach them what they needed to absolutely know before going into combat. Right. And
wow.
so what we did, we used a Bloom's taxonomy, a form of Bloom's taxonomy, where this was knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and creation at the top level of complexity. Right. So, and then going across the top, we were looking at the difficulty or the complexity of the topic area itself. So let me get my annotation there. Yeah. So this was like about a fact, and then this was a process, and then this was, or no, a concept, excuse me. And then the next one was a process. And then finally you had a system. And then the last category was system of systems. So you get increasing complexity as you move to the right. The larger the topic area, gymnastics, really complex. Whereas maybe over on this side, the concept was just the uneven bars. And I could be so as I go to the left, I'm getting more and more specific. Like, here's how the knowledge of a fact is in this one. Here's how you tape your hands. For any of the event, this is how you prepare your hands with wraps or whatever it might be. Or here's how you warm up. And then here's how you, now at the comprehension level, you can say it back to me in your own words, and it means exactly what the definition was. And then here's in application, you can do that in a small way. You can show me one exercise for warm up correctly. And then analysis, you can actually put together complex sets of exercises. And then in synthesis, you're going to show me a set of warm up, performance, and cool down for an entire apparatus and how it all fits together. And under creation, you might be inventing a new stretch that's never been seen before. So as you go up the scale of Bloom's taxonomy, you're getting more and more complex. And then as you go to the right, you're getting more and more complex. So the most complex thing is if I have an integrated system of systems that I have created from scratch. That's really hard to do. But what I was able to do with my Army officers was to fill in the blanks of what was in all of these squares. And then we use that as a diagnosis tool to not only did it give them the standard, but they could say, hey, here is my level of my proficiency boundary. You know, I'm competent, I'm fully trained on these. I need some practice on these that are at the edge, and I'm untrained on these. So I have this border of where to go. And then as a coach, I could just say, I think it's time that you increase proficiency here by getting to the synthesis level with narrow focus on that fact. Or no, it's time that you learned how to expand knowledge of about a system of systems. So not only was this a diagnosis tool, but it also gave us a way to decide where was the next place that we wanted to make an improvement. And there was a stair step. It was always building on successful performance. And so we were not immediately jumping into an inappropriate level of complexity, which would be too hard. We always knew where we were on this skill map. So as you were talking about your, it was like the before, the maintenance, the after competition, coaches, parents, athletes. It also occurred to me that if you started at the rudiment level, the foundational level, that's where you're selecting the things for your pilot and for your 3-month course. And
Right, and I have that, and
yeah,
luckily,
yeah.
I that whole thing going up there, I have that besides creation, but they do
Yeah.
get to take in some of their own,
Yeah.
Start bringing in some of their own, because they are, by this time, they can do,
Yeah,
they,
they're inventing.
they
They
can be
could be
creative.
inventing
Let's say
the,
they can
they
be
could be
creative
inventing
in
their
what they
own
need to
moves.
do.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, a lot of this is built in, which sounds really good for me. I
Yeah.
never knew
So
I was
as an
doing this.
artifact there, I would just say for Joy and for Denise, of course, the this is a module. If you think about your ecosystem, to me, this integration of this whole piece, when it's completed, is way up here that's why I drew it in the upper right hand corner of the sketch. I just automatically did that because I know that's where I always draw mine. And then I always like to say, almost using the Cotter model of change, that sort of the introduction, the boot camp, and then the long course or whatever, which might have terms or modules, sort of increasing complexity. But, monthly and quarterly chunks sort of aligns with the way we think about, college courses, a 5-week course, a 10-week course, half a year, a full year, whatever it may be. But then some of these shorter ones that are appropriate as a hint of the things that are to come. And now you start thinking about the artifacts that you need to build out. That's where the poster is what gets me to, and then I can talk about it, and then maybe I build it into a practical exercise, and maybe I add it to a journal. And so you start building out these artifacts as logical supports to this pathway that gets you to proficiency in your knowledge structure, your knowledge map, proficiency map. And then maybe over on this side, as an ecosystem idea, you start talking about your allies or sources of power, inspiration, or capital. As we think about supply chains, there's my suppliers, there's my process, and then there's my output to my clients. So there's sort of a logical progression that way. There's also a time progression, a flow from left to right, and then an increasing complexity or strategy near the top, tactics and facts near the bottom. That kind of structure is a general purpose way in which you can you could have that terrain allocated in your mind where you're going to plant these different ideas. So now, if that's in my mind as my template, and Sue just starts telling me about her work, she can start anywhere. And Sue knows her own story, so she's got that story in her head. And then as it comes out in her stories, I can just start mapping that into the places where it goes as a placeholder. And then once we got some structure in there, I can now start thinking about drawing connections and relationship diagrams. How does this body of knowledge connect to, like the long course? I would ask her, how much of her total knowledge map does that cover? I could ask her, are there any gaps in your knowledge base that need to be filled in? Like I could still coach things over in here with a note to myself that I'm going to add that stuff later. Like I don't have to wait for 100% completion, perfection on everything I need to do, because a lot of the things that I'm going to find are going to come from the problems that my clients have. And I'm going to build an artifact form, and that's going to get dropped into my course. And then that's going to get fit into my knowledge map overall. And that thing is going to grow as my clients bring me more and more interesting issues to deal with, to contend with. So, as a, Tony Busan is a good guy on mind mapping. Tony Busan, and then for mind maps. And then this comes out of systems thinking. And the good guys on that are Waters Center, and they're a nonprofit, and they have a ton of curriculum that's free and open to the world forever, like the 15 habits of systems thinkers. Wow, you'll be on that forever. You know, the 8 standard tools of systems thinkers, the 10 typical problem types that systems thinking can help you with. And then, so there's a whole toolbox of things. This systems diagram is one of those top level idea maps. And I have found this to be, I did this for our soccer club when we were coming up with I guess we need a strategy here. We need a plan. Yeah. So, all right, this is what we did. When I'm looking at Army officers, trying to help them craft their year-long educational practice, we do this but I use the artifacts that we already have. But how to think about it systematically, the mind map supports that really, really well. So I would suggest that, if you miss part of the opening session that Sue and I just did, you can watch as she's doing the talking, and I'm just kind of scribing that. And when she was sort of at a natural pause or natural break point, I could then ask some follow-up questions for clarification. What is your relationship with John? What about could you do a research survey of his people to find the list of problems? Oh, no, I already have that. Oh, okay. Now let's take that problem list and map it to your existing tips. Let's organize your 30 separate tips into that structured. So now we can start looking at the relationships to see where the specific work needs to be done. And that's how you just start dropping those into your production schedule. What do I want to work on next? Hey, I'm tired of working on this. Okay, go work on something else. Let that rest a little while, like crop rotation, you know? You can go where it's easier to work on. It's something that needs to be worked on, and you start building that habit of continuous progress making, and that will really help get you through this enormous list of things that we got to get done. So that would be my speech on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Joyce, so this started with, again, what me talking about needing a lead magnet, but also, we're talking about having a book, that would lead into our course, or have a book and then create the course. I've got the course, I've already got the book, but they're not directly related. But now I'm working on like a large tips book, and I've got some philosophy stuff, and I got all this other stuff. But where do I need to focus now, and how can I bring this stuff together somehow so that they don't look like this is over here and that's over there, and this is for that person, this is for that person. So this was a good way to tie it all together so it is all directly related. Lot of work and lot of it. But again, so I'll have to narrow it back down, like you said, start somewhere and then pick up
So Ken, does everybody start with flashcards as their bottom line artifacts to put their
I do. That's what I coach them to, is because it's like, just do one thing. Today in this 15 minutes, let's just draw a sketch of something and then add some words to it, put a title on it, and now tell me a story about what you drew. There's your flashcard. And that's all it has to be. What other flashcards are suggested by this? Oh, it could be this, that, and the other thing. Okay. Put 3 5x8 cards down on the table and just put the title on them. Now, is there a logical way to connect those with the progression? Do I have to do one before the other? Oh, I got to go A, B, C, and D in order to make sense. Oh, no, I just need to hit 1, 2, 3, and 4 in whatever sequence. As long as I cover them all, then it's going to be okay. So I can start anywhere. Well, if I am coaching someone and I have the knowledge I'm trying to transfer or whatever, if there's a logical progression, then I know that I got to steer them in that direction. Hey, they want to talk about number 3. I said, yeah, but first, let's put that in the parking lot for a moment and talk about the preconditions. I've got to answer these other questions or you ask them open-ended, what else do you need to know before you can work on that? And then they do discovery. So they've got ownership and they are now emotionally connected to that material and they will retain it better rather than me telling them what to do next. So it's a little more indirect, but if you're trying to build autonomy in your students and show them that they actually know more than they think, sometimes asking those Socratic questions will get them in. But you got to sort of know, is there a logical sequence I got to go through? And then draw your mind map that way. And you don't put it all on the board at once because there's like this ugly blob doesn't mean anything. It was the build out and the story as it evolved that allows you to do that. So knowing your material, and then Busan talks a little bit about that in his material on mind mapping. But as a technique, as a coach, I almost always do that in that first session with the clients. Hey, what's working, what's not working? Show me your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as you understand them in your environment. And from that, we can start building out some strategies. So that sort of visual process helps a lot. And it's not fancy, it's not pre-drawn, but there's an intention, a direction that I'm heading to. Someone
Well,
asked
that's
in
what I
the
was just
chat,
going to ask. Is
Yeah.
this your process for creating the book, for creating the courses, or now
100%.
you just said you use it in coaching? So it's
Yeah.
a foundation process just in general?
It
for
really
everything?
is. I've been doing that kind of ecosystem mapping since 1991. I learned how to do that in a master's program at USC for systems management for Department of Defense acquisition engineers.
Hmm.
And then when I was working in quality control and process improvement for manufacturing and total quality management, turned out to be the same kind of thing. When I learned Lean Six Sigma and all that jazz, it's the same thing. So there's and then when I went back to the Water Center to get my credentialing, because I'd been using their material, and it was like, oh yeah, that's what I've been doing. So when I was writing my book, it was painfully obvious to me that the piece in the middle that was missing was the authoritative professional body of knowledge credential that says, look, guys, I know 350 pages worth of material here to the nth degree. Don't make me read it to you because I will. So what that does is it allows them to allocate trust about the tiny little things you ask them to do that maybe they don't see the deepest meaning of that yet. But they are replacing that need with trust in you, which is supported by the evidence of you've got a book that looks professional and is professional. Okay, that allows me to help them in the moment and with them putting trust. Once we start working together, you'll discover if I'm trustworthy based on how it feels and the progress you're making. But that book sort of establishes, I think of it as the keystone in that bridge to get over the river, It's what holds that bridge in the middle. The left-hand side is the tips and the facts and the flashcards. Way over on the right-hand part is that long-term coaching relationship, which is adaptable and open-ended and built on a relationship of trust over the years. That's what I would suggest. It's probably worth, when you run this video back and just kind of follow along through there, and that'll make sense. And then next week, if you have questions about any of that, that's what a perfect way to come and talk on Friday or whenever you want. And that's the other thing I was going to say from your earlier comment about is the group right for you, whatever. So one of the things we learned in the true storytelling was that if we have that common agreement, those common agreements about what we're going to do, then once you're in the group, you're always in the group. And when you show up, you have a story to share in a truthful way. And we're not going to judge you, but we're going to listen deeply and appreciate your courage. And then when the true storytelling exchange is over and we feel like we want to work on some things, we can, but we are going to create enough time and space just for the truth to be told and to be listened to, just to acknowledge that for a moment. Hey, could we just take a half an hour and just tell the truth about things without worrying about, well, what's it all mean? And what do I got to do? And what do you think of me? And what's the next step? Could we just enjoy living in the truth and listen to ourselves telling the truth and watching ourselves learn to listen to the truth without judgment? When you can, that is the one that's remarkable. I mean, I only discovered that after about 2 years of trying to facilitate a group. It was like, it's the listeners, not this. We think of the telling the truth in public as the truly courageous thing. The truly courageous thing is being able to open yourself up to the story and let it genuinely sink in without trying to defend yourself against crazy on you. Just, being really open. That's hard, but it's very rewarding. So whatever the time is,
listening can, because forgiveness is a habit for me. And so when somebody is telling me a story that, and then he did this, and then they said that, and then I am actively listening, but I am forgiving as a habit. I'm just forgiving them. And when they give me a chance to talk, I can say, I have forgiven them already. And we can move on because they've told me the story and I've let them get it all out. But we're not going to rehash it and rehash it and rehash it. We're going to practice forgiveness, and it's very hard. But it's very hard for some things and it's very hard for something else. But it's all forgiveness as a habit. If you have that habit, you can forgive it all. So that active listening is really important. I like that you were talking about that. Really.
So Ken, can I ask you, do you take, are those whiteboards you've been drawing on, are they going to end up with the slides?
Well,
or do I need to take a screen capture of them before they
I would say, well, they're in the video now.
Okay.
And so
I can pause it and do that.
Yeah. And then you can take them. It's like I use that technique a lot with my Army guys when I'm drawing, what the battlefield looks like and how things are moving. It always, at the end of it, it always looks like a dog's breakfast at the end,
Right.
But when they go through it, it's sort of like, oh yeah, it made sense at the time, but you can't start at the end of it and then say,
you can't take a picture
yeah, that's what,
right.
So what I end up coaching them to is how to, once they're comfortable in telling the story and they can draw the diagram for themselves, then we try to render it into smaller artifact pieces, like the table that I showed you. That's a nice little chunk, and you can clean that up. And so we end up turning the handwritten sketch into a nice clean PowerPoint I can put notes on it or PDF notes. Like what I like is I'll make a PowerPoint with the images, and then I'll print a PDF, and then I'll put the text notes and hide them next to the artifact. So I give that to them and I say, now I want you to just look at the artifact. What does it say to you? Now, what do you think I'm going to say? Write it down, what you think I'm going to say, and then click the note and see what I actually said. And compare what I actually said to what you thought I was going to say. And now we have the subject of a very interesting conversation. What did you say that I didn't say? What did I say that you didn't say? Where did we both say that we agree on? What did we say where we have an apparent difference of opinion? So I've got 4 different ways to compare what they committed to what I said. And in that way, I'm teaching them to be coaches of themselves and to learn to trust their eye. And now when they become an accountability partner with another student, they actually now have some skills where each one teach one or each one coach one. And now we have battle buddies. And now they're not waiting for me to tell them. They're telling each other. So then I do a group session on a Zoom meeting like this, where they've uploaded their little case study with their markups, what they've noticed. And then at the highest level, they write what they think I'm going to say. Then when I go to that session, I just open those up, and now I don't have to produce the artifact. I've got 50 students that are generating personally meaningful content. And it turns out that the things they're working on are probably the things that the other students are struggling with too. And now I don't have to imagine what their problems are. They can just work together. And then if one student sees another student working on it, I now have a base camp that they can have a workspace to collaborate in. And if they come up with anything interesting, they share it with the team. And now what we've got is co-creation of the content. And their artifacts become like the artifact that I used to teach the book. I had one of my students, who's now a teacher for me, who was one of the authors of the book, did a 1-page note sheet in a structured way for each of those 10 sections. And he sent it to me, and it was organized. It had all the keywords, the concepts, connections to system, self, and market, and all that stuff. And then I could pull that up, and then I could talk about that extemporaneously for an hour to highlight certain parts of the content. But it was helpful that he put it into his words, because now that helps me understand what is sticking to the students, not what I sent, what sticks. And then when they give that back to me, that's where we go from knowledge to comprehension. Knowledge is they can repeat what I said. Comprehension is they can say what I said, but in their own words, and it means the same thing. That's how I know that there was internal processing. That is evidence of learning. If they can then do something with that, with their hands, and solve a tiny little problem, I've now moved to application. If they can look at a complex problem and break it into structured tasks, each one I can put the right process on. Now they're at they're at analysis. They've broken complexity into simplicity. They've solved simplicity and reassembled a solution. That's analysis. When you can get to that level, most of the work is done. Synthesis means I can take this complex problem and that complex problem and find a way to get them both done on their own accord, and I can mix it without screwing it up. So I can do, almost like multitasking. That's now you're getting into real graduate level development. Creation of coming up with a brand new system that's never been done before. Okay, whatever. I hope you can get there. Maybe somebody can't, but most of the guys that I'm teaching don't need to get to that level, but it's there. So that's what I wanted to say. So
Then let me ask you a quick thing, because of that big blob there, since the goal for next week is our lead magnet, which could lead into a book, then, and I get the flashcard things, we already discovered that, I probably have those already. So what would be a good lead magnet then out of all that?
This is what I would, the steps that I would follow to do that is, with your own drawing and a pencil, I would resketch the ecosystem to your satisfaction. Not with every level of detail filled in, but just kind of the big blobs in the right areas. And then Once you have that in place, now you can ask the question, what is my lead magnet? What does it do? Who does it do that for? And what's the shape of it? You know, what is it? What's the method that it uses to accomplish that purpose? Because it's going to be a purposeful artifact that's going to fit somewhere on your ecosystem map. It's probably a little more than it's more than a tip, because it's going to be wrapped in a attention gathering, next steps, communication teaser, that kind of. So there's more things that go into a lead magnet than just the creamy nougat filling, which is the tip. There's some other purposeful things, like if you have a brand and an icon that represents your beautiful picture of discover the leader within, my lead magnet better have my brand on there with all the business card contact information so they know where to go for more goodies. Okay, so it's got to have that. And then it's got to have the guts of the tip. And it probably needs to start off with the attention gathering of
Yeah.
that. You got to create the tension right away. Somebody that you love that has a problem, and it's, if we don't do something about it, it's bad. How's this going to turn out? I've got to know. So we got to have something that is creates the likable person, the lovable person. That's them. Or my friend John had this problem. Well, it's probably a problem that a lot of people have. Do you know what it's like to have a friend like John who has that problem? Let me tell you how I felt about my friend being in pain. Oh my God, I want to help that guy so much. So what did I do there? I addressed two different populations. The person with a problem, or a person who knows somebody with that problem that would, I don't know how to help them, but if you could show me how to help them, I'm interested, because I'll have them come see her, or maybe I could learn and I could help them. So now I've doubled my outreach and I've created that human empathy. And then you say, well, I thought about it for a moment. Then I realized that if we did this thing, we could get an amazing outcome. And when we did that thing, here's what resulted. We resolved that tension and they got the ruby slippers and they were able to. So now I've already given them the good feeling of oh, there is a solution and here's what that solution feels like. Now it's a simple matter of, well, how do I get from point A to point B? Well, here's the guts of it. Here's 3 steps, 5 pieces, 4-part, whatever it is. The 1, 2, 3 of how you get there. And they've already accepted the fact that it works because you showed them what the solution already was. And now it's easy to accept those 3 steps because I accepted that the solution was possible. Somebody I love that has a problem, if we don't do something about it, it's terrible. But don't worry, we did a thing and now we're back in Happy Valley. Oh, how did we get there? Oh, here's the 3 steps, and here's where you go for more. Done in one. And now if that's, you adjust that recipe to the way that makes sense for you and or whatever they're teaching. Then whatever that instrument is, whatever that artifact looks like, then draw that into your ecosystem and show how that to yourself, how that is actually connected to the other things that you're going to produce. That same kind of formula probably is your first 10 tips, which is your pilot course, which is probably your 5-week boot camp, your first, level 1, problem solving 101. And then that by that time, they will know if you're the solution for them for bigger pieces. But at each one of those steps, there's got to be some kind of payoff that is a clear value add that I can put in the bank. I got to be able to ring the bell and say that really made a difference. Even if I never take another course or do any of that, made a difference. You've created value for them that endures, and that becomes your brand, is that you're a person that delivers when called on. So that's what I would do for the week ahead is I'd probably maybe watch the process of the map one more time, draw your own. And all it has to be is a C- effort when you're done with it. And the good news is the first one you draw is always the worst one, except for the second one. Because in the second one, it's harder because you now did it once and you saw how things you want to fix. So the second one's actually harder to draw. But the third one and everyone after that's easier and easier, and you just get better. And it just has to accomplish the job. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's why that little picture up above on my background there, I could do a better job on that, but I am kind of happy with the way that turned out because I remember the moment in which that was the perfect representation of what it was I was trying to do, is understand that question mark at the intersection between the brave scouts that came out of the indigenous ways and the Western ways, who had suspended disbelief and were trying to create peace and harmony at the boundary, at the border. I can work with those people. And if we can work together in that boundary, maybe we can go back to our own tribes and help them understand why we don't need to be at war, that there was a lot more in common than. So that's part of the narrative for me of why I'm doing that work, because I see the payoff, not just now, but later is what I'm trying to work towards. So I would watch the video again, try the sketch, think about that recipe for the lead magnet, map it out, follow their instructions to meet their, because you're paying attention and money and time for that. Do what they say, critically and creatively. But I'm sure they're going to say something similar to what I said. And then craft that thing out, do your best, and maybe if it's already, brief it next Friday. Kind of show, and then what did you learn between now and then while doing all of those things in your little personal learning reflection journal, where you're keeping track of your little victories. Because if you don't write them down, you'll forget them and you'll realize how many steps you've taken. Keep a little learning journal there of the daily, weekly, monthly victories along the way, a little travelogue. Then that becomes your true story of what it was like. And that's actually evidence, by the way. Because 3 years from now, when you start telling the story of what you did, your memory of what you did will be different than what you did, because that's the way our mind works. So it's nice to have that little, there I was. That's who I was in that moment. And I love that little guy. Look how courageous those first tentative steps were. I mean, why do we keep pictures of the baby's first steps? They're much better walkers now than they were back then. No, because those little baby steps are precious, because it was showing us the potential, and you just love that little guy. That's all it has to be. So give that a try. I keep little boxes of my little 5x8 cards, just store them in there, and every once in a while I pull out and say, oh my God, I remember that. And you'll find that to be, that's where, when things are a little tough or you're not sure what to work on next, you'll just relax. If you're not sure what to work on next, you're supposed to just relax a little bit. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Go back and take a look at the file cabinets, remember those people and places, and it'll whisper to you what you need to do next. That's when you don't know what to do, it's sort of a note to yourself. It's time to relax a little bit. Stop pushing so hard. You got to let the muscle rebuild. That recovery time. Sue knows that. You can't lift every day.
Yep.
So
Okay. Thank you.
So I have coming up on 7. That's a natural break point. You guys have been amazing listening to this old monkey talk. So I would just sort of I would say what I'm going to work on later tonight is just I do my weekend reports and record some strategy stuff. Saturday mornings I go coach the soccer kids, and Sunday I give another academy practice. We play games on Saturday and then we do academy practice on Sunday. So that's what my weekend looks like.
Well, the
Oh.
first Saturday of the month, I have writers group. So I have one writers group from 10 to 12, and I have another one from 1 to 3. So my first Saturday of the month, I will be writing. And I have so many new facts and new techniques and new things to ponder over just by attending this tonight that I'm sure some of this will show up in my writing tomorrow.
Cool.
So I'm looking forward to that.
And Denise, I promise, I'm going to record my speeches on the text, and I'm going to send that to you by this time tomorrow, so that we don't lose sight of that stuff.
Not a hurry, but I appreciate it.
Yep.
I saw that there was a part 1 and a part 2. I had no idea what it was, so I have not listened to it yet.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious. I have used Scrivener to write before, and Scrivener literally has yellow 5x7 cards, not so much for doing a mind map or a drawing, but for
writing, yeah.
putting all your facts down in your character development and plot details, and then you can literally put the cards in order to tell your story. So I have used Scrivener and love that.
Yep.
But I have a lot of pretty 3x5 cards sitting around back there in my studio, and who knows, maybe I'll start some 3x5 cards after I watch how that process worked with Denise. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, there was one before that goes into the whole process. Ken, you might want to do that one as like
I got to put that one in too. Yeah.
But tell people what it is, and that's like the one that's the foundation.
Yeah, the first night that we did, we talked about, and that's the one where I went over the like architecture and artifacts and my business process. I'll put that in there too.
And you're going to put it in an email, or you're going to put it in Basecamp?
I'm going to put it in Basecamp. There is a message. There's one message thread in there which says the weekly recordings, and I'm going to make that just a growing list, and I got to add a little title of what each little video would contain, so it's not, it's not so that it's transparent, and that way there's always sort of like one growing list of the sessions.
And, I love that.
I
just got into your section of Basecamp earlier tonight. I mean, just a couple hours ago. But now I know I can go there for artifacts and recordings and things that we're working on here together. Yeah, I really appreciate your time, Ken. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna sign out here and wish you guys well.
All right.
Take good care.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, Sue. Bye.
Bye.
Mm.